Hello and welcome to the Synthetic Electron 3D YouTube channel. This is part of my series on Elegoo Centauri Carbon mods. Today we're going to cover noise reduction and chamber air recirculation. Now, I'm not a fan of the Centauri Carbon noise levels, but I think most other people like it even less than I do. So I was thinking, hey, an interesting problem to solve. Started experimenting, put a fan on the inside. Wow, it gets quieter. Surprise, surprise. But when I looked at my GDX Plus 4, I noticed that, well, it does that very thing, but not for noise reduction purposes. In particular, it's more for air recirculation to retain more of the heat for these engineering grade filaments. So, hey, two birds, one stone, right? Stick around because by the time we're done here, we're going to compare and contrast the noise levels on two Centauri Carbons, one with the mod and one without. What you're watching here is one of the shrouds that will be part of the replacement assembly that replaces the original equipment in the back that contains both the case fan and the auxiliary fan. This was developed in part with feedback from the Elegoo Reddit community, so thank you for that. This print looks pretty good. There are a few little imperfections because somebody didn't dry their filament first. Wonder who that was. But now let's look at the assembly. I just mocked it up here because I'm not going to put it all back together and put it in, you know. But this is where your OE fans, original equipment fans, will come from. And the carbon filter, which I'm not sure what those are. I think it's some form of activated carbon, but I've never seen that before. It's not very effective because it's all about surface area, and you kind of need more than that to really filter out all the nasties if you're printing that kind of filament. Here I am unplugging the auxiliary fan, and that's the loud one. It's just a 7530. The case fan, as is labeled in the firmware here, is an 8020, very common fan. This one's not quiet for what it is, but it's not nearly as loud as the auxiliary. There are a few screws that are holding these in by default, so keep that in mind. If you're only using two fans in this new configuration, just keep this little passive circuit board. It just converts the 4-pin from the board to two pins for the two fans. If you're doing something more elaborate, you don't need to keep it. This is the assembly that replaces the enclosure that we just disassembled in the previous section. It is modular for printability, as well as allowing users to swap out the shroud part. You'll need 15 M2 by 6mm self-tapping countersink screws, as well as a screw for the fan, or you can use a bolt. I don't recall what size screws they use for these fans, so if somebody knows, please leave a comment and let us know. One thing to remember when you're assembling this is to make sure you get the air blade opening facing the correct direction, as I've got it here. Otherwise, you'll be blowing into the back panel, which is not ideal. Through the magic of editing, I will spare you all the footage of me fumbling around with these little tiny screws with my fat fingers, but once you've got the base assembled with the air blade, you can put any number of different shroud pieces on the top. Now, there's only two available currently, but there very well may be more in the future as people have different needs. So keep that in mind, and you only have to print out that top part as it will remain compatible. Now I've just about got the top shroud on, and I'm going to demonstrate how we may populate this using the case fan here. Keep in mind there is an orientation to observe when you insert the fans. And then this particular shroud includes facility for the carbon filter. Now, I'm not going to be installing this one today, but if this is what you want, if you want to reuse that filter, then this is the shroud model that you want. This also has a facility for a 6010 fan, which I'm also not going to be using today, but That will require more complicated circuitry than just the 2-fan setup, and that's beyond the scope of this particular video. This particular shroud also allows for the mounting of the OE circuit board, so I'm going to demonstrate that here. You only want to put one side in because it's kind of hard to get the 4-pin connector on otherwise. It might be easier to use other screws than these little things with washers, but that's what I had. As you can see, it kind of swings out, so you can connect the connector after you insert it in the printer. Now we're installing the blower fan, and this is the one that will hang underneath the stepper motor on the left-hand side of the printer. The OE fan has too short of a connector on it, so you will have to use an extension if you want to keep using that. Now let's take a look at the other shroud design. This one doesn't have a slot for a 6D10 fan. Instead, it has a removable vent cover, so you can install that more easily without removing the back panel, but it is still easier to install it if you do. So keep that in mind. This design also has a spot to mount a custom circuit board with a voltage regulator or a buck converter or something similar to that. Sharp observers will note that I'm not using the OE fan in this example, but I will be using that in the sound test at the end of the video, so keep that in mind. This one is just easier to plug in and was kind of an intermediate step, and some people may be interested in getting a lesser fan like this because it is much quieter. That's pretty much it for assembly, and it's ready to install. So this is just the other shroud piece for contrast. For those who are wondering, I'm just using Elegoo Rapid PETG in blue for this project. I do get a small commission from the affiliate link, and that really helps support the channel, so that would be appreciated. Installing this is a little bit tricky, but you'll be okay if you take your time and gently tuck it around everything to get it into place. Then it's just the 3 screws, and I would recommend leaving them loose until they're all in and then tighten them down. You'll see that I'm using the circuit board down there unmounted because I'm using the OE fan, which is going to be present for the upcoming comparison. Looks like I've just about got it here. It's all snug and it works. Look at that. Now let's move on to our test configuration. In order to keep things fair and not include other fans, I connected the fans themselves up to a dedicated power source. Also, the printer is not plugged in, and so now we are going to move on. First up, OE from the bed inside. Pretty loud. The recirculating blower is slightly less loud. Here it comes. Here's the OE configuration with the phone sitting on a completely enclosed printer. And finally, the internal recirculating blower on a completely enclosed printer. Alright, as one might expect, the printer with the mod that was enclosed was the quietest. But this test wasn't exactly a scientific test, and I have questions. Are there certain filaments that might not perform as well in this configuration? I don't know. I haven't personally had an issue, but I haven't done any comprehensive testing. This is a new model. I would love it if somebody else would take it, test it, put it through its paces, and give me their feedback. That pretty much wraps up the video, but if you would like to download the model, I'll put a link in the description. If you found this video entertaining or otherwise useful, please subscribe, or at least hit the like button. I'd really appreciate it. Thank you.